eastern India, what a country. The contrast between the noise, heat and dust of Calcutta, with its teeming population of about 15 million, anarchic traffic and colonial heritage, the peace and serenity of the Sundarbans waterways amidst the mangrove forests, and the majestic grandeur of the mighty Himalayas, the world's highest mountain range, could hardly be more complete. We visited monasteries in the Himalayan foothills, tea gardens near Darjeeling, a ride on the famous toy train, and much more. The Hawkins and Doels were quite blown away by it all, so do come and join us for a little taste of eastern India. Let's start our exploration with the huge city of Calcutta, or Kolkata as it is now more properly known. And the first thing that hits you is the noise. Calcutta drivers drive on their horns and take the view that once sounded, they can do as they please. It's not a place for a European visitor to drive. But there are wonderful oases of calm and quiet. Eden Park Gardens alongside the Test cricket ground, with its vast floodlights, was a splendid spot for a walk after a long journey. The spectacular and striking St. Paul's Cathedral. St. John's Church, with its memorial to the disastrous Black Hole of Calcutta episode in its grounds. And Kumar Tulli, where statues are made using a variety of interesting methods. This fat boy is the baby Krishna, one of the many Hindu gods. Then there was the colourful Jain temple. And of course, there is the great Calcutta highlight, the Victoria Memorial, with its fascinating museum and set in delightful gardens. You could easily spend half a day here, especially if you are interested in the history of the British Raj, which lasted nearly 200 years, from 1759 to 1948. Because it all started with the British East India Company, based in Calcutta, Calcutta was India's capital city during that whole period, whereafter New Delhi took over. The Raj era left Calcutta a legacy of colonial buildings, best explored on foot. The spectacular General Post Office, St. Andrew's Church with the crow on top, so that after a long argument its builder could crow over the slightly shorter St. John's Church. The Writers' Building, the Law Courts and Dalhousie Square, now called BBD Bagh after the initials of 3 revolutionaries whose statues can just be seen through the railings. Walking reveals other fascinating aspects of Calcutta life. Street-side ablutions and breakfast. This chap was cutting up tobacco leaves. This one had clearly had too many Kingfisher beers. This street near the university had nothing but dozens of bookstores. Nearby was a famous Indian coffee house. This is a mosque capable of holding literally thousands of people. And then there was a rattly tram ride to the racecourse, where we were lucky enough to see the end of a race, and down to the Ganges riverside. It's sometimes known here as the Hooghly River, as it passes a place called Hooghly on its banks. Even here, some 80 miles from the sea, the river is tidal. The railway line runs right alongside. There are colourful stalls to serve the many people who come for a stroll, or to dip into the holy water of the Ganges, or indeed to take a sunset boat ride. The oarsman has to work hard against the tidal flow. Because the river is so wide, there are few bridges. This massive suspension bridge is called the New Bridge, and this older, heavy iron bridge is the Howrah Bridge, because it crosses to the city of Howrah on the other bank. We'll take our leave of Calcutta with this view of a blood-red sunset over the mighty Ganges. The Ganges, like most of Earth's biggest rivers, ends in a massive delta, in this case a huge mangrove forest known as the Sundarbans. You get to Sundarbans via a 3-hour drive to Kodkali, passing a number of interesting things on the way, such as this Muslim cattle market, cows being sacred to Hindus, and getting an impression of Indian rural traffic. The porters at Kodkali were amazing, and soon we were on a 2-hour boat ride to our destination camp. Sundarbans being crisscrossed by waterways of varying sizes, and all transport being by boat. A large part of the Sundarbans is a wildlife reserve, and a number of tigers have been introduced, but being rather secretive, they are rarely spotted. After the noise and pollution of Kolkata, Sundarbans provides a serene and peaceful place to relax. And who knows, you might be the next visitor to spot a majestic Royal Bengal tiger. The Sundarbans tiger camp was lovely, even sporting a card room for bridge players. The birds are all having their lunch. I think it's a clever trick to keep them away from the hotel guests while they dine. And the native village, a short walk away, was a delight, and full of smiling faces, whether drawing water, making mini meringues, cleaning teeth, or just very young. After returning to the city, we caught the immensely long overnight train north to the Himalayan foothills. On arrival at New Jaipalguri railway station, the gateway to North Bengal and Sikkim, we were met by helpful Glenburn staff with a picnic breakfast, which we had in a picturesque spot, ahead of the long drive to the Glenburn tea estate near Darjeeling, a magical place accessed by a truly terrible road. See how slowly that car's going to go over the bump. There is much to do at Glenburn. A walk through the tea garden and local village, much better kept than most Indian villages. The village school children are smartly turned out, and their singing in English is best described as enthusiastic.
Thank you, God, for everything you have given us. You have given us all things right and beautiful, all things bright and small, all things bright and wonderful, the good God and more.
Or down by the Rungdung River, as far as the suspension footbridge over to Sikkim. On the way we saw an absolutely newborn calf with its proud mum. A hydro power station under construction. Superb food, including a barbecue lunch at the Glenburn campsite by the river, a tour of the tea factory with yet another member of Glenburn's friendly and competent staff. As the cuttings one day will turn into tea bushes. The next stage after the little cuttings.
Kilogram each drum. We put the tea after removal of moisture. And so there is no crushing here. So it rolls the leaves by not breaking any leaves and not breaking any cell. So this is the sieving machine which shake the tea. You can see the different hole here where we get the different size of the leaves, which is this. So this is all autumn flush. So this is the leaf grade, which is the best first grade of the tea.
And a chance to taste exotic teas. There's the tea connoisseur having a real good go at it. The other timers, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes for the brewing process. And on our last morning, the mighty Himalayas finally revealed themselves, having been hiding coyly behind the clouds hitherto. On one of our Glenburn days, we drove up to Darjeeling, which for well over a century has been served by a narrow-gauge railway, the so-called toy train, a real Thomas the Tank Engine experience. We boarded the train at Goom, where there is an interesting museum, for the 50-minute journey to Darjeeling. The rain detracting not at all from this nostalgic steam train experience, travelling as it does along the high streets. After lunch, we went to the Darjeeling Zoo, which had a lot of native birds and animals, including the beautiful and iconic red panda. And on the same premises, there was the Himalayan Mountaineering Institute, with its fascinating collection of relief maps, models, mountaineering memorabilia, and a memorial to Sherpa Tenzing Norgay. Our Darjeeling day concluded with a visit to the Tibetan Refugee Centre, where one of the main activities was the weaving of high-quality carpets, and we witnessed both the wool spinning by older women and weaving by the nimble-fingered younger ones. Sometimes working in pairs, and sometimes with a child in tow. Next day we set off on the long drive to Pelling in the state of Sikkim, which only voted to cease being an independent country and to join India in 1975. The boundary between West Bengal and Sikkim is the Teesta River, which we crossed on this bridge. Roads in the Himalayan foothills are steep, narrow, winding and poorly surfaced. An average of 20 kilometers per hour is all you can do. Road repairs and road building happen sporadically, and is often left half-finished, and closing a road completely for half an hour or more, with absolutely no warning, is commonplace and all part of the great Indian experience. On this occasion, shortly after arriving in Sikkim, we decided to have our picnic lunch while we waited. This man was cutting cattle food from a tree and throwing it down for the family to carry away. Typical Sikkim village, rice terraces waiting for the monsoon. Every village perched on the side of a hill. In these foothills of the Himalayas, everything is on a slope, and that's the reason why the roads are so bad and so slow. Little flock of goats being driven along the road. And this is a Sikkim haystack. Later we had a chance to stretch our legs on the long journey by strolling across this bridge, but sacred cows have the right of way. Our final stop before Pelling was the Tashading Monastery, up a bit of a climb which left us puffing at about 7,000 feet, and we were lucky to find it preparing for the important festival of the Holy Bumchu the next day. The monastery boasts a medical facility, innumerable prayer wheels and prayer flags, great views on a clear day, a massive carved bell with an astonishing reverberation, a mass of prayer plaques, all carved over 45 years by the same man, who is now 90. And on leaving, we met pilgrims arriving for the festival and bringing their gear to set up camp for a day or two. We finally arrived in Pelling as darkness fell, but next morning we woke early to find wonderful views of the Himalayas from our bedroom windows. This is the closest we got to Kanchenjunga, the world's third highest mountain, just 860 feet lower than Everest, a truly majestic sight. We then set off for the sacred lake Ketchiopalri, in the shape of a giant footprint, and although surrounded by trees, no leaves settle on its surface. There's our guide, Uday, very devout Buddhist, getting a couple of plastic bottles full of holy water to take home to his wife. After the lake, we headed for Gangtok, capital of Sikkim, pausing for lunch in a small town with a veritable prayer-wheel power station, and again, as dusk was falling, to admire a huge Buddha statue in the mist. Next day, with special North Sikkim drivers, we headed north, pausing to climb 125 steps to a viewpoint, well worth the effort, to see Kanchenjunga in all its glorious majesty again. On our way to the Phodong Monastery, we passed a pretty waterfall. And in due course arrived at the monastery in its wonderful setting, albeit with a rather odd symbol of a laughing skeleton on the gatepost as you go in. We actually arrived at the monks' lunchtime, although some of the younger ones seemed to be engaged in some electronic and un-monk-like activity while they waited. Once a year, skilled craftsmen monks painstakingly make from a mixture of butter and other materials these statuette images to offer in the main prayer hall. We felt both privileged and lucky to be able to witness this rare activity. It's good that the monks are allowed time for exercise, and being India, this obviously includes cricket, with a bit of stone breaking going on in the foreground. After lunch in Gangtok's main street, with the usual chaotic mix of pedestrians and traffic, we visited a splendid orchid display. And then walked up to the Chorten Stupa, where we encountered the familiar sight and sound of monks at prayer. The usual collection of prayer wheels, here being operated by your narrator, and an incredible array of lighted candles. Quite a place. Our hotel in Gangtok, overlooking the main football stadium where there's a bit of training going on at the moment. Next day, on the journey to Kalimpong, back in West Bengal, we visited yet another monastery, Rumtek, very picturesque and with a lot going on, including this impromptu football practice on the way in. Not to mention a lot of noise, dancing and face painting. Even Rosemary Dole was captured at one point. The Holi festival was continuing on the streets of Kalimpong when we arrived there later. Our full day in Kalimpong started with a visit to a remarkable cactus collection. It continued with a visit to a school assembly at St. Teresa's Church. Where the children were assiduous in their sweeping, and then up to the high point of Diolo Hill, where the views were a bit misty, but the hang gliders were still active. From Diolo we went on to a major private school, Dr. Graham's Homes. We had a glimpse into the science lab, climbed up to the church, which is out of use after an earthquake, and saw a group of candidates awaiting an admission interview. A bit of basketball practice going on. On our walk back down to the town, we got an insight into Indian water distribution systems and how the houses are constructed on such steep hills. We finally arrived at our very last monastery. Phew! But this time photography was permitted inside, and very colourful it was too. After that, we concluded our Kalimpong experience with an interesting walk through the extensive Saturday market. Next day we set off for Bagdogra Airport and the flights to Calcutta, Dubai and London, passing a group of monkeys on the way and of course a lot of overloaded trucks. One lasting impression of India was the charming people. Children, monks, senior citizens and all. But without doubt our strongest memory of Eastern India will forever remain those marvellous mountains.